Oh man, if you need to edit some of these scandals out, you're more than welcome to.
We love scandal.
We love scandal. Well, what a treat it's going to be today. Welcome to the Reimagine podcast with Sean and Kylie. What exciting news. Today is our 100th podcast.
I know, it's
our
cool.
100. So we have been consistently delivering a podcast every week, except for a couple of times when I was really, really mad with the world and I just couldn't get myself together to be able to actually even record a podcast. But this is our 100th and it's on video, and it is with a person that I don't have enough words for. Our guest today is a man called Tommy Miller. Tommy Miller is bringing heaven to earth. Tommy Miller is on YouTube and all of those usual places. But he is a pastor, he's an apostle, a teacher, a student, a husband, a father, a grandfather, a friend, an author. He's about to actually release a new book called Unveiled, and that's his fourth book, I believe. He's a guitar legend. He's a passionate Jesus lover, which is what endears me to him the most. He's an encourager. He has an outrageously perfect hairdo. And because we have video, you'll be able to actually see his hairdo. So if you're listening to us in the usual place, which is normally on Spotify or some of those places, go to YouTube and check out Tommy Miller's hairdo. And also check out his massive biceps. He has a heart on the outside.
Yeah.
And this is what I love most about this man. Is everything that he is on the inside is available for you to see on the outside. And he's one of those fellas that loves God and Jesus and Holy Spirit and is on the endeavor of being relationally connected, so much so that it oozes out of him. Tommy, welcome to the Reimagine podcast with Sean and Kylie. It is phenomenal to be able to have you on our podcast in the first place, but also the fact that it's our 100th is very meaningful for us. Thank you for entering our life and thank you for being on our podcast.
What an honor. What an honor. And I had no idea that it was your 100th episode. Congratulations. I hosted a podcast once and I did 10 episodes before the wheels fell off. So I am so impressed that you guys are able to consistently deliver content on that type of basis. And you might not remember this, but when Deathless came out, I was not searching, I guess, but I did kind of a little podcast tour for the release, and I requested to be on the Wildfire Tribe podcast. I'm like, well, it's not, just wasn't the right time. But now I get to be here for your 100th episode.
Yeah.
What a privilege that is. A privilege. You guys are remarkable. Thank you so much for having me.
For us too, mate. And I don't actually forget anything. I'm a bit of an elephant that way. And I do remember that message when you got in touch with us, and I skimmed through it and I was just like, Deathless, who is this guy? Like, he's like some strange heavy metal dude or something. You know how sometimes you get contact from people around the world that are a little bit odd sometimes. And I think I accidentally and with regret probably threw you in that basket and just moved on with my life. But things are different now and things were different for us then. This has been for us, 2 years of something completely new for us, you know. As we share you with the world and as we share our time together today, we're also getting to know each other better. And our intention is to be conversational and help other people understand who we are and who you are and our experience of walking through this earth, in union with God and what that feels like and what that means. And we're just in a different space than we were 2 years ago. You know, we've walked out a lot of healing. We've walked out a lot of time where everything has changed for us. We used to be in hotels. We used to sell beer. We used to sell cigarettes. We used to be in that world, but we've been in many worlds. And for what we're doing right now is so different. It's so different for me. I've sort of had to soften a lot. I've had to come to a place where I'm not necessarily living on the edge of believing that everybody's out to get me or do something wrong to me. It's a whole new space for me.
Wow.
So thank you for being a part of the adventure of our life. I'm sure that Kylie's got a whole list of questions to ask you.
People probably don't realize, but we've been tracking with you for a couple of years now and just love your community and your heart there at Legacy Church in New Philadelphia, Ohio. And we're now very honored to be ordained as pastors in part of your network, which is really a great honor for us and has been a really special part of our 2024. We really love that. And
I've honors that we've had. One of the greatest.
Yeah. And it was certainly an emotional service and knitting in a way that I can't even describe it, to feel like you're part of a group of people that you've never actually met in person, but we've, shared time over Zooms and as part of just being connected into what you release on the internet and everything. And it's been amazing to feel that sense of community with your beautiful people that you have over there. And I remember reading somewhere that you're saying humanity was divine before it ever was human.
Yes.
And, that revelation, this journey that we're on, is coming into that realization, like Sean's saying, we're having this space that we're not separate from everything. We are the essence of years, and I love how you speak to that so beautifully. So what does that mean for you? What does that mean in a real way?
And not only that, what does it mean for Joe Blow on the street? Because we are people that walk up and down the street, talk with humans that are not necessarily always aware of the spiritual discussion even, let alone, the deeper things and the deeper mysteries. So, when we have this conversation about what it means for you, with the question that Kylie just asked you, how do we apply this in everyday life with everyday people?
The best question that you could ask. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine earlier today, and we were talking about what heaven on earth actually looks like. And you have to discern the difference between the nature of God and the nature of God in response to sin. And what I mean by this, I feel like I should make a large disclaimer. Okay, so I have within view eight Bibles on my bookshelf. And that Bible is a response to sin. Had Adam and Eve never sacrificed their identity, they would have never had to have a Bible. Worship, church services, fivefold ministry, the miraculous is a response to sin. We don't need the miraculous while heaven is on earth.
Yeah.
So it's odd to think, and I think it's probably our Pentecostal roots. Like, we think heaven on earth is just everybody walking around doing miracles. But it's not. Heaven on earth is you and I being in a union relationship where all separation is a complete and total illusion. Mm-hmm. When heaven is fully manifest on earth, then the nature of the Father in his endless and perfect love is reflected in every single human relationship on earth. And it's not going to be a bunch of 10,000 church plants per city. Everybody knows how to memorize their Bible and everybody can work miracles. Those things are completely irrelevant when heaven is truly on earth. They're not needed. Those things are a response to Adam and Eve sacrificing their identity on the altar of religious pursuit. So the reason that I am desperately in love with the local church is the local church is the womb where heaven can truly be lived out. Legacy isn't enamored with memorizing scripture. We're enamored with doing relationships right. When you understand, I'll just use you guys as an example. The first time we connected with you, we couldn't imagine our life without you. And what happens when, and this has happened to us so many times, which is why we've created language to explain it, is when God gives you relational destinies. He's forged these things apart from the foundation of the earth. You meet somebody for the first time and it feels like a reunion simultaneously. And you just know that God had intended for you to be connected in word apart from time and space. And now you don't know how to do life without each other. So all that to say this, what does it look like for humanity to be divine on earth outside of falling prey, which we can talk through some of those things, to believing that they're merely human? You are God incarnate, not God incarnate in response to sin. So miracles, the Bible, the church, all of those things are God's avenue to the restoration of all things. But the restoration of all things is an expression of divine nature and humanity, predominantly revealed in relationships. And that's wild for me to consider. Faith, hope, love, these are all fantastic, but the only one that's going to be around when everything comes to consummation is love. That's it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I love it. And I feel like for me, that journey has come from an understanding that I have to actually being able to tap into that place deep within myself, that dwelling place where he is within me, and allowing his love to invade every aspect of my being. And in that place, you come into this revelation that it's almost like you get to the point where nothing else matters. And then you can shine in a way and be in a way that you can't learn your way into it. It's like you have to actually let it become the essence of who you are. And that's not easy, because we live in this culture where it's a knowledge-based culture when we acquire all of this knowledge. And I love knowledge. I love knowing things and studying and understanding things. But my understanding didn't bring me into that place where all of a sudden I was just captivated in this place of just thinking. So it's almost like that journey that we're going on to understand who we are comes from just letting that love gate open within us and allowing ourselves to be loved. Did you have that moment for yourself where it moved from being something that you were trying to understand to actually a place where you felt the very presence of his love?
Yeah. I almost started my sentence completely wrong, but I understand what I almost said. My wife and I have been married for 14 years, but that's not what I meant to say. I meant to say that I've been in ministry for 14 years. Now we're regarded as, somebody that you can look to for proper theology. But there was a time in my life when my theology was being reformed, but my worship life was being sacrificed. Mm-hmm. And when I had the worst theology on the planet, the worst, I mean, heaven, hells, raptures, can I do this and still go to heaven? Crying because somebody's smoking a cigarette and I'm going to have to watch them go to hell, and all of it, awful theology. I also had about 6 hours of windshield time a day. And during that 6 hours of windshield time, it was just me and Jesus. And your theology doesn't bring you to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. His presence does. And my theology was awful, but I was beholding him for hours and hours and hours a day. And I knew his nature, I knew his face. And I have been in times of my life when my theology was awful, but his presence was able to completely undo that. And I understood him for who he was. And I've been in times of my life where I'm authoring some of the most popular books in our stream, and his nature isn't showing up in my face because I'm not showing up in his. It's, oh my gosh, I'm a mess. You should my wife's preparing a new song for our worship team, Holy Forever. And it's just got something on it. And somebody asked me what it was called the other day, and I got the H out of holy, and I was just like, I just started weeping. Can't even say it. But yeah, I completely agree with you, Miss Kylie. I think it's 1 John 3. It says, we don't know what we will become, but when we see him for who he is, we'll know who we are. And there's kind of a error of conflation that people approach that passage with, where they think that they're still waiting to see him to know who they are. But the same author that wrote that wrote the revelation of Jesus Christ. He got to see him. So who we will become is no longer a mystery. We are as he is. And who he is, enthroned and seated, is no longer a mystery. It's clearly visible. But the only way of becoming him is beholding him, and you behold yourself as in a mirror. It's good. It's so good.
I love it. It's almost like everything's done. We're free to just live a life that we choose to live, knowing who we are, who we're related to. But we continually argue with ourselves that we might be wrong. And we and we make things more difficult maybe than they need to be. I feel like even the podcast that we're on now, I feel like, there's 4.5 million podcasts in the world. Obviously, not all of those are spiritual or religious, but there's plenty of them that are. And we're all talking, we're all reading, we're all sharing, we're all helping each other understand different intricacies of scripture. And it's fun. It absolutely is. I feel like whilst ever we're talking about him, whilst ever we're interacting with each other when he's in our midst, which he always is, like he doesn't ever leave, so he's always there. I feel like it's fun, but I almost feel like we've invented this crazy world or industry around talking about God when all we need to do is go outside and look at the trees.
Yes.
And I guess where I'm going with that as well, in relation to you and your theology, you're a man of study, you're a man of clarity, you're a teacher, you have wisdom beyond your years because of your life, because of your heart, but also because of your ability to read and understand and teach from those places. I went to Bible college in 2012. I got, God introduced himself to me in 2011 for the first time in my life in the middle of Australia in the outback on a 3-wheeled motorbike. And my life completely flipped upside down to the point where I couldn't even believe that I had to tell Kylie that I had met God because I didn't understand why she couldn't see that.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
then I went to Bible college, and then I actually got an award for memorizing the most Bible verses off by heart. I can still speak them. And I learned what they wanted to teach me about God. And then I went into church planting and things like that. But we just took on this radical existence of believing that we could follow his voice, we could hear his voice, we could go and do what he wanted us to do. We moved towns once, more than 500 kilometres because the trees were waving at us, because this is the existence that we've chosen to believe is possible. And over the last 12, 13 years, it's almost like we've had to unlearn what we learned whilst we were at Bible college to actually walk in the presence of him again. So it's interesting when you talk about, your theology was really bad, but now it's much better or it's good or whatever. There is theology available to us right across the world on every platform that's different. Will we ever reach a point in our existence where we all agree that someone's theology is the package? Or is Tommy Miller's theology great now? And then there's another person whose is and whose is and whose is. And I guess this leads into how are we supposed to function on earth denominationally? Because Tommy is wise. He has his theology and I love it. But this guy over here, his is different. How do we navigate this, Tommy?
That's a fantastic question too. That is a fantastic question too. So I'll give you something super practical. That, I mean, this is just personal stuff. Obviously, this is things that people like you and like myself have to learn how to swim in these waters. The number one thing is that all separation is an illusion, including doctrinal separation. To allow doctrine to separate us relationally is the most unstable and immature foundation that a relationship can be founded on. So that is like the baseline of every relational pursuit that I have. You can't help what someone else thinks of you because of their doctrine, but you can always govern how you interact with someone else because of yours. My doctrine affirms that all of humanity are the nature carriers and image bearers of the Savior of my life. So if I hate them, I hate him. And we are so intimately entangled that if I hate them, I hate myself.
Yeah.
I mean, Chris Blackaby had I don't remember, it might have even been at my church, but he had a sermon illustration where he was talking about how silly denominational boundaries and things were. And he was talking about how the hand hates the foot, so the hand stabs the foot, but can't understand why it's getting dizzy at the same time. And, really weak and busy, but I want to make sure that I make this guy's not having an influence on public opinion. So the way to navigate it, like I said, there may be multiple dimensions of this, but we have to ensure that doctrine never establishes identity for any human. I have a unique role, and I think this is true of. I mean, you could use the Bible to substantiate what I'm about to say, but Paul took his apostolic responsibility pretty seriously, and he knew that he had to establish what truth was going to create their culture. So he took it upon himself to point out legalism and make sure that the people that he was responsible for weren't going to enter back into religion and striving. But at the same time, the people that he referred to as Judaizers, that he was warning people to not listen to their doctrine. He also said that if it were possible, he would blot his own name out of the book of life for them to have what he has. So one of the things that I think that we're pretty poor at doing is being able to have different doctrines and never losing value for one another. And honestly, the way you value your fellow human, it says a lot about the doctrine that you carry. The shortest illustration that I can give you, my wife came out of a very naturally, I think they literally call it practical holiness. So they're always contending to look holy, as far as their haircuts, their makeup, the way they dress, what they do, what they say, what they watch, what they listen to. So the way they judge themselves is the way they judge everyone else. Like they would literally walk into a shopping mall and determine whether or not somebody was saved based on whether or not they were wearing a skirt or jeans. So the judgment that they have for themselves is the judgment that they exercise over other people. And then you get delivered from practical holiness, and then you get into spiritual holiness, which has to do with sowing and reaping and prayer and fasting and all of these things that you do to become more holy. They're not natural, but they're soulish, I would say. But then you still judge yourself. I haven't prayed enough, so God's not happy with me. I don't have access, yada, yada, yada. But then that still creates this elitism in you where you hold everybody else to the standard that you hold yourself to. You're never going to approve of yourself, so you're clearly not going to approve of somebody else, because religion always breeds contempt and self-righteousness. So the way that you view other humans is always, all judgment is self-reflection. And then when you come into the revelation of union, you realize that you're in him. Like, you're in him. You can't leave. David said he can't go to hell. He can't die. He can't escape from his presence. And if you can't escape from his presence, then neither can the Baptist preacher down the road that judges you every week. He can't escape from his presence either. So the theology that I hold makes me like Christ because I'm one with him, not because I prayed enough and fasted enough, and not because I wore jeans and no makeup. So that means that the judgment that I've passed on myself is extremely inclusive of the people that are currently judging me. The way to walk that out is to see in someone what they refuse to see in themselves and what they refuse to see in you. Dan Mohler always used to say it takes two to tango, but it only takes one to make peace. So
Yeah.
you are the one that gets to be the initiator of union. You're the one that gets to preserve. That's what I love about that passage. Preserve the unity of the bond of peace in the spirit. You don't have to create it. It needs preserved through the realms because it's already the foundational truth of our existence. We're, like I said, we're so intimately entangled that if I dislike you, I'm disliking me.
Yeah. Do you think that we're so powerful in our inness with him, even in our ignorance of that, or when we are completely unaware, that we are constantly as humanity creating our own realities that we don't even know whatever it is that we believe is coming to us and it's coming in alignment with it. We're attracting that frequency of whatever it is that we're giving out. Do you think that's what is happening across the world? That, and you know, like you're saying, if I don't like that person over there, I don't like myself. It's that reflection constantly, isn't it, that's coming back to me, that I'm unaware of how powerful I am in him, that I'm constantly co-creating my own existence in every moment with my thoughts and my intention and my mouth.
Yeah. So Romans 8 would concur with you, Miss Kylie. And that's what I love about that passage is a lot of people teach that Adam lost dominion in the garden, and humanity never lost dominion. Their dominion was counterfeited when identity was compromised. So creation simply became a reflection of who Adam and Eve believed they were. And they were made, it was made subject to frustration because Adam and Eve were frustrated. And now creation is crying out for the unveiling of the sons of God, so it can be delivered into the glorious liberty of the sons of God. All reality is a result of human consensus, all of it. And that's, I don't know if this is the right time to go down this road, but like the emphasis on going to heaven has robbed the local church of its effectiveness on earth. Because if all of us are trying to die and get out of here, we'll get exactly what we expect. And if human consensus is that, oh man, Kylie, your new single is epic, absolutely epic. I listened to it at 6:30 this morning, but it's emphasis on being in a body, and because you're in a body, you get to your emphasis gets to be now. T.S. Eliot wrote 4 poems that were comprised in a book called The Four Quartets. And one of the quotes from that is that it is the occupation of the saints to be concerned with where eternity intersects time, which is now. That's it. You literally can't rewind time. You can't go back in the past and do anything different. You can't fast forward to the future. The divine is intersecting with time and space right now, and that is the only place that it does. So human consensus while on earth is what is shaping and framing the world that we live in. And I believe, as a matter of fact, we taught probably 5 years ago, all of the world's neurological problems are rooted in bad doctrine. The belief that life has no meaning. What's more meaningless than knowing that the world's going to hell in a handbasket, everything being under the sway of the wicked one, not being able to do anything about it, and hoping that you die and make it through judgment so you can live in a non-embodied ethereal existence in the afterlife? What's more meaningless than that?
Yeah.
It's meaningless. So
I'm in total agreement. Of course, I was having a conversation with a man down the street the other day who has all sorts of circumstantial issues in his life. You know, it's things that happen sometimes in your life are really, really difficult. I'm just, as I'm listening to him talk about what's happening with him now and how he's navigating what he thinks his future is going to be like, I can't seem to separate the idea that if you don't have an identity in him, that you're going to continue to find yourself not knowing how to navigate difficulty because you've got nothing to fall back on. Like it's like just blowing around, and you know that you have a heavenly Father that's inside of you, that you're inside of. Even when you know that, it's quite frankly difficult enough. But if you don't know that, like you don't have that, and how do you wake up each day and move forward believing, like you say, that at some stage in the future you're going to either go to heaven or hell, or the world's going to end in 5 years, or whatever it is that you've decided is going to happen, actually has a lot to do with how you are living your life right now. So yeah. I don't know how I used to live without him. I don't know that I was. So that sort of leads me towards evangelism, Tommy, because I've heard you talk about metrons, spheres, that type of language, and where a person functions and where their influence is, and all of that type of discussion. And for me, in my early existence in church life, when I got saved in that sort of language, and I stepped into Bible college and I started to get used and abused for my gifts and put in places where they saw that I should serve, etc. They told me to evangelist, and I did all the things, I walked the streets and I talked to people, and I was very good at it. I can talk to people. And over time, as time's gone by for me, I feel like so much has changed for me in my experiential walk with him that I'm no longer feeling like I need to go out and sell him to people, but that I can just interact with people and have the belief that people can come to know him by knowing me. Can you talk to, I guess, the different jobs within a church, that's probably not the best word to use, but I feel like for people that don't know church structure, then from the outside of a church, when you look on the inside, it's like, oh, this fella's the pastor, this person's the worship leader, this person's the evangelist, this one's. How do you know where your sphere or your metron is?
That's so good. Let me say this first. I believe that the way the apostolic came back in the 2000s, late 90s, 2000s, I believe that 2025 is going to be the rebirth of the authentic evangelist office. And I mean, it's going to go nuts. And here's why I think that. We just mentioned how the emphasis on like a heaven hell gospel was, what was birthed into the Western culture through, the Reformation. So then everybody came to this conclusion. They call it universalism, and they're like, well, everybody's going to heaven. So why do we need to evangelize? Well, Jesus never. Oh man. If you need to edit some of these scandals out, you're more than welcome to.
We love scandals.
Okay, so evangelism was a very distinct and clear part of the first century church. And evangelism had absolutely nothing to do with getting someone to heaven. So when the goal of your gospel is to get somebody to heaven, and then you come to the conclusion that God's more inclusive than you thought he was, then your desire to evangelize, or actually I would just say your understanding for evangelism goes away. So you're kind of paralyzed. You don't know what to do. So what we've done in our school is we've revisited every single use of the words soter, soterion, and sozo in the New Testament. And do you know not one of them has anything to do with an afterlife? There are 107 uses of the word sozo in the New Testament, and most of them are Jesus saving you from an afterlife. There's a woman with an issue of blood, and he says, daughter, your faith has sozoed you. every single rendition of Jesus rescuing somebody was him rescuing them from an earthly circumstance that was going to tear them from the gospel, which is life and immortality, Zoe and Aphtharsha. Okay, so you guys are going to lead the authentic evangelism movement in creation. And you're going to start bringing heavenly solutions to earthly issues. So evangelism is no longer about getting people to repeat a prayer so they can get to heaven. It's getting people to see that the fact that they're moving, breathing, and being is evidence that they're God's child. And now God wants to be intimately involved in their life, not their death. Now, church jobs. It is one of the most beautiful things to see a local church functioning the way that it's supposed to function. And what I mean by that is that there is no such thing as better in the kingdom. There's no such thing as better in the kingdom. There is only different. And we endeavor to use first century biblical structures at Legacy because we believe that if God inspired it, then God will honor it. So we have fivefold ministry functioning at Legacy Church. Sometimes we use titles to not throw people off. So we sometimes refer to the senior leadership as senior leadership and not apostolic. We have Kelly Love, who's an executive pastor. She's a prophet. Prophets are good at strategy, structure, and finding holes in the foundation. She's phenomenal at it. The endeavor of the apostolic should be to get everyone to come to the fullness of their identity, to contribute what they have to the body of Christ, not to produce people after their own likeness, and not to produce people to fill positions. You guys know that I'm a music junkie, and my tastes in music aren't always extremely sanctified. However, what I love to use as an illustration is there's a guitar player named Tim Henson. He's the lead guitarist for a band called Polyphia. They're instrumental. They're reinventing music. They're doing things with their instruments that nobody has ever done. And I got to watch a video the other day called The Evolution of Tim Henson. And it was Tim Henson playing at 10 all the way through 28. Okay. And when he was 10 years old, he sounded like Stevie Ray Vaughan. When he was 22 years old, he sounded like John Petrucci. When he was 25, he started to sound like Tim Henson. And no matter what you do, if you're trying to become like someone else, you're always sacrificing yourself on the altar. And just I know nobody's trying to become famous, but in order for you to authentically give creation what God gave you to give them, you can't be a copy. Even when he was playing like John Petrucci, he was playing some of the best guitar that anyone was playing on the planet, but he was playing like someone else who was authentically being themselves. Yeah. And then Tim Henson and his band become, world renowned when Tim Henson starts playing like Tim Henson. So all that to say, a lot of times when we go to Bible school or whatever it might be, where they're just kind of creating lemmings, we all have to believe the same thing. We all have to say the same things. We have to respond the same way. When the authentic apostolic office just wants, there's no other Sean Henderson in the world. There's never been one in history. Like 6,000 years of humans being birthed into creation, you're the only one that is ever going to give creation Sean Henderson. And if that is not the authentic expression that leadership or whatever it might be is trying to pull out of you and into the body of Christ, then the body will pay for it. So that's what we try to do.
So when you say, we're not trying to get people to become, another version of me, or we're shortchanging, the world that needs you to be uniquely you. And I'm in total agreement. I think that that's the ultimate expression of your existence is to just remove everything else that's hindering you from being you. So when we're all able to function like that, in the fullness of ourselves, not being held back by anything whatsoever, we're living in complete freedom. What does that look like? Because there's always a discussion about, creation is groaning for the manifestation of mature sons and all of these discussions. do you think that it looks like something that looks different in different parts of the world? Like, can somebody walk down the street and go, wow, there's like 10 people there that are functioning in their maturity, and I don't understand what's happening there, but there's something different there. Is this where we're going? Are we able to talk to trees and interact with them and have them talk to us and with animals? I've recently, a person within our community we've encouraged them to talk to animals, and they're experiencing conversations with animals without using noise. Is this where we're going as manifest sons and daughters, or are we like just hippies?
No, I think you're right on. See, and even kind of to expound what we were talking about initially in the podcast, you know, the nature of the Father versus the nature of the Father's response to sin. You know, his nature isn't just doing miracles or quoting scripture, or, you know, those are all response to things that are wrong. So the actual manifestation of heaven on earth through you is you authentically doing, and this is gonna sound crazy, and people are not gonna like the answer. You authentically doing what satisfies you. Mm-hmm. And you authentically doing what satisfies you outside of trying to give occasion to the flesh. So that is you know, putting on your new nature and doing what satisfies you is literally what God created you for. So when God made Adam and Eve, like we all know that Genesis has an allegorical component, right? So he made mankind and he placed them in Eden. And the word Eden literally means pleasure that satisfies.
Yeah.
and that's what he wants. Like, I have another friend named Matthew Vayers. He's from South Africa. He's a beautiful human being, and he just carries something so special. And when you know, people ask him why he's in ministry, his answer is always different. It's not always different time to time, but it's different than anyone else you hear. Like, people are in ministry because I have a burden for people and I want to please the Father. He said, I'm in ministry because I want to be. Like, it literally is what I enjoy doing. I have no end game. I have no goal. I don't want to amass 10,000 people in a church. I like talking about my Father, and my Father's going to honor what satisfies me. And if talking to trees satisfies you, fantastic. I believe that sons of God should interact with creation as though they're one with creation. I have a tree that is 12 feet from me right now. It's on the other side of a wall, that has been in my yard for over 30 years. And about 40 years ago, my wife wanted it to become an apple tree. Guess what it is now?
An apple tree? That's amazing.
Apple tree.
It's beautiful. And so how does that come about? Like, people will be thinking right now, what does he mean it's an apple tree? Like, what was it before? How did that practically happen? Like, what did you do? Yeah, like I can already hear all the questions around just your one statement.
Okay, so here's how it went down. My this is I guess I want everybody to know how professional I am in regards to horticulture. Okay, so my wife wanted fruit trees. So I went and bought 2 pear trees. And I planted them, and they look great, and they're still in my backyard. And one day as I'm walking by them, I turn the label around because it's still hanging on it, and it says non-fruit-bearing pear trees.
Yes.
Fantastic. So I have 2 beautiful but useless trees in my backyard now. So my wife says, why don't we try an apple tree then? Fantastic. Okay, so I buy this little tiny sapling and I plant it in my backyard, and a week later I ran it over with a lawnmower on accident. Just knocked the thing flat over. And we were probably, I don't know, a month away from when, you know, trees start to produce fruit. And I looked at this tree. I have no idea what species it was before, but it's been here for 30 years. And I live in the house that I grew up in.
Wow.
Nobody planted this tree. My mother tried to have this tree cut down a dozen times because evidently it just sprung up from some, squirrel dropping something in our yard. And the week after I knocked down the apple tree that I planted, this thing starts producing green apples the size of softballs. And it has every year since. It has every year since. And the unique thing that it started doing this year is in the beginning of December, which in Ohio is about 25 degrees and snowing, started sprouting new growth off the top. And I have pictures of it. I'll send you them. Like it wants to be taller. It just desires to be taller. So nowhere else on the tree, only the top. It grew 6 feet of green, totally green leafed limbs when the rest of the tree was completely bare and the apples were on the ground. So how did it happen? Out of season, completely out of season. How did it happen? Well, I'm extremely disciplined and I have no clue how it happened. I have no clue. My wife wanted an apple tree.
I love that too, mate, that, you have no idea. I think that this is the adventure of life that we pursue. It's like we don't actually have to understand how everything works or why. I feel like the freedom that we speak about, freedom and adventure, is a couple of words that we throw around a lot because we're believing that is what has been given to us. So having to know everything sort of puts you in a box of trying to understand everything where you're no longer free, just walk around. We walk every afternoon and there's a tree in our town that's been struggling, and we believe he's struggling because he's separated from his friends. He's got a lot of other trees that are similar to him in another area not far away, and they're all healthy. And this one tree's on his own and he's unhealthy. So we talk to him and we tell him he's beautiful. And this tree is growing healthier looking because we're deciding to talk to him. Everything that you get to do in your life is a unique experience laid out for you because the creator of the world loves you and wants to experience this life through you. And as soon as you think that you've read Tommy's book and now you've got it all worked out and it doesn't work the same way that it worked for Tommy, what are you falling back on?
I love it.
So good. So good.
We fall back on our relationship with him and also our identity and our understanding of who he is to us. You were talking before about your wife, walking around deciding how people's spiritual existence looks by what they wear and that sort of discussion. And I think that also comes back to what it is that you believe about your relationship with him and how he loves you or doesn't, and what it is that you believe that he wants you to do whilst you're on earth or not. And then it sort of goes from there. And so the theology that's around the world that you're delivering, the realization that we're related to God, Jesus is our brother, we're God's children. This kind of language and this kind of understanding is new. I think that it's still relatively new for people to come into the realization that if that is true, that changes how you see the world. That changes how you function in the world. That changes how you look at other people and decide where it is that they're functioning, whether they're healthy or not. So to bring it all back to how we first sort of came across you when we first met you, I see that you are good friends with Chris Blackaby. I see that Chris Blackaby is a beautiful man from Australia as well, who we haven't even met, which is ridiculous because we're from Australia. But he is the identity man. He is traveling the world telling people about who their dad is and explaining what that relationship looks like. And out of that, he has all these adventures to share with the world. So you're aligned in that thinking. That's something that you also teach. You also teach about immortality. Let's go immortality, Tommy. when we talk immortality, is our body like continuing on forever? Do we have to look after it, or do we just get old and wrinkly and we still are in our bodies, but it's all misshaped? Immortality and the way that you teach it and what that means for the world, can you break it down for us?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So first, here's one of the most important things about the gospel is belief in the gospel void of results is what produces results. You can never, ever be pursuing results and get them. Your stance, your belief system has to be in the unseen. And if you are like doing the spiritual litmus test, like I did this, and I'm going to see if it worked. I did this, I'm going to see if it worked. Checking to see if it worked is an act of disbelief. It is an act of disbelief. So if I tell you, Sean and Kylie, you guys are everything he is and nothing that he's not, and you are immortal, then you can't start looking for aging signs. You can't start seeing if your body's responding to sickness the way that everybody else is. You have to believe the message void of results to get results. So it's wild. But the immortality is the same way. And this is something that I could talk about for a very long time, but let's break it down first. Okay, so like the clearest communication of the gospel is from Paul to Timothy in 1 Timothy. And what Paul tells Timothy is that Jesus declared the gospel, the hope that was for us apart from the foundation of the world. He brought to light the gospel of life and immortality. That's what he said. He brought to light life and immortality through the gospel by abolishing death. Okay? So when we think of the word immortality, we usually get like a Marvel superhero thing, like if you get shot, you don't die. That's not what biblical immortality is. Life is the Greek word zoe. Immortality is the Greek word aphtharsia. Two components to the same good news. Zoe is a word that refers to the quality of life. Aphtharsia is a word that refers to the longevity of life. So Zoe, in its definition, is the quality of life belonging to the resurrected Christ, and aphtharsia is the body of a man exempt from decay. So the clearest, like I said, the clearest articulation of the gospel isn't that you die and go to heaven. It's that you live the quality of life that belongs to the resurrected Christ forever and in a body. So everyone that hears, oh, you believe in immortality? I don't want to live like this. That's not immortality. That's not biblical immortality. It's living in pleasure that satisfies. If you really want to boil the Genesis issue down to something, is they took away satisfaction. Like if you keep pleasure and you get rid of satisfaction, you produce religion. Because you fast for 2 days, you're pleased, right? But you're not satisfied. So what happens next? You have to fast for 3 days, and then you're pleased, but you're not satisfied, right? And it's that same pursuit that causes people to put a needle in their arm, right? It's the same exact thing. So Eden is pleasure that satisfies. So God intends to restore to you a life in a body on earth that needs no pursuing. It only requires rest. It only requires rest. Rest void of results is what produces the results of rest.
Yeah.
It's so I wrote a book on immortality, and everyone thinks it's the craziest thing. It is literally just the gospel. It is just and only the gospel. When Jesus was talking to the sisters of Lazarus, he said, I'm the resurrection, which is the promise that sleeping bodies will get back up, and the life, which is the promise that living bodies won't die. I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he will live again. And if you believe in me and live, you won't die. There's a generation of human beings that God has mandated to cancel their appointment with death. Death is not a savior. I always try to put myself in Jesus's shoes, and whether that sounds dogmatic or not, but I love my wife. Like, we have the best marriage in the world, and I want her to know how much I love her. And you do that sometimes through, affection, acts, gifts, whatever it might be. If I gave her a gift and somebody else took credit for it, I would make sure to set the story straight. I don't need credit for giving her the gift, but I want her to know that I'm her husband. So if I come and atone for all of the world's deceptions, and my desire is to bring you back to a life that satisfies, that is exempt from decay, that's full of satisfaction, and there's no more weeping, there's no more sickness, they will never be deteriorated by illness again. That's what Athanasius said in On the Incarnation. And the entire church is waiting on death to do for them what I have already done in my atonement. I would be mad. I would be upset.
Yeah.
As Jesus Christ, the lover of my soul, the monogenetic Son of God, has given me all things that pertain to life and godliness, and I think death is going to perfect me and not his atonement, I would be sad.
Yeah.
I would.
And, I feel like it's been such a thing too, like in religion, that die to the flesh. And when we've said that, we've put everything to do with pleasure in that basket. And I think it wasn't until I went on, we go on the process of the renewing of our mind, and we really come to that place where our heart is in a right place with God. But it wasn't until I really stepped into my loving my body journey that I realized, why have we got this body with all these sensory places for pleasure that we're not allowed to engage with? So why? And then I started to investigate that as a body, soul, spirit being. Why are we not allowed to engage with pleasure? Why is pleasure bad? Yeah. And then started to revisit that with a friend, go, okay, God, so you've actually created us for pleasure.
Yeah.
Is that like just on the weekends, like outside of my ministry? Like, is that just with my husband? Is this something that we're actually created for every moment of our lives? Is this actually what we've said no to for so long, that is actually a gateway, that it's going to lead us into this place that opens up a whole pathway into where, when you speak about everything being transformed in 2025, a whole new rise of the evangelist and all of these aspects, is part of that engaging with this place of pleasure.
Oh, yes, it is. And this is, again, a wild topic, but God, your Father, would have you in pleasure 100% of the time. And it's not just for Friday and Saturday nights. But the reason I say that is because you can be in the same setting. As a matter of fact, everything takes place, obviously, in the same setting. Pleasure without satisfaction always breeds fear. So you can only be in one of two places. You can only ever be in pleasure or fear. One of the guys that I used to do ministry with all the time, he had his wife had an issue with him. It's cute. I'm not about to get him in trouble, but they would have a movie night, and within a half an hour, he'd be asleep. And she said, why are you always asleep? He said, because my whole world's in one room. My kids, you guys are cuddled up on me. Like, I'm not afraid of anything right now. And the difference between pleasure and satisfaction is, pleasure is when you say, this is so good, I can't wait to get more. And satisfaction is when you say, this is so good, it can't get better than this. And it takes place let's just say, I don't want to use examples that I've used 10,000 times, but let's say that you're in Australia. Okay, everything wants to kill you in Australia, right? I took Chris Blackaby fishing once, and he starts walking down the river. And I was like, man, he doesn't know this area. He doesn't know any. And I'm like, he's from Australia. There's nothing here that he could be afraid of.
I had a spider. I walked through a spider going down the street this morning to get coffee. And a whole web was there, and a spider was actually on my head.
Yeah.
Come to Australia.
You guys are built a little bit different. But okay, let's say you're in Australia, right? And there's an open plain that is full of poisonous spiders and snakes and kangaroos that punch people. Those are the kind of videos we watch in the United States, by the way.
Yeah. They're all true.
There's also a 10-carat diamond that you'd like to have for Kylie. So the difference between pleasure and fear, or preference and fear, is that you get to walk to that diamond and take it without regard to the consequence. And what I mean by consequences, I have to do this and able to get that. Pleasure means that you live by preference, and preference that comes from the nature of your Father uniquely expressed in you. So if you want the diamond, go get the diamond. Religion will make you look at every snake and spider along the way. And that's no way to live. Like, that's why people want to die. That's literally why people want to die, is because all they see is snakes and spiders. And that's not necessary. God said he'll give you everything that you need before you ask it. Yet when we don't seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, which is him, we will live in fear instead of preference, fear instead of pleasure. You can't, those are the only two modes that you can be active in. And most of the time, I mean, I would say all of the time, if you fasted for 2 days, why did you fast for 2 days? You probably fasted for 2 days because you were afraid that God wasn't going to answer your prayer, or afraid that you wouldn't gain his approval. And then because you're still in pleasure and fear, the reason you fast for 3 days next time is because you're afraid that you only get what you got when you fasted for 2 days.
Yeah.
The cycle never ends. It never ends until you believe the message void of results.
You are like a walking, talking quote. I was thinking, when you flick through Facebook or Instagram or all of those things, you always got these cheesy quotes that don't mean anything, that people post. They're just like variations of scripture or something that it's like, oh, yeah, like that doesn't mean anything. But then, like I listen to you talk and I just think, far out. It's like you've just a continual quote machine that has substance. Like I don't know how to explain it apart from the fact that I feel like everything that you have to share with the world is of immense value. It's like you've sat in it and you've thought about it, and you're not just saying things for the sake of saying them. It's like, I believe this and this is why. I really admire that about you, Tommy. I admire that in anybody that's actually walking out, not just a literal, I read books and this is what I know about God kind of existence, but not only do I do that, but I apply it. I in the Bible it talks about, he will never leave me or he will never forsake me, and that's the advice that some pastors will give you when you feel like he's left you, and it means nothing. It means nothing until it's coming from a person that's grabbed a hold of that and then walked it out and then come to the realization that actually, he has never left me. The times in the desert where I took my children because we were following his voice and things didn't turn out the way that I expected that they should, showed me that he never, ever left me.
Come on.
And I believe that that's a part of what it is that you're bringing to the world that is of such immense value, is not just what it is that you read and that you know, but it's how you deliver it in the way that you're living it as well. So thank you for bringing heaven to earth. Thank you for being the person that you say that you are. There's a lot of people that will tell you what to believe or what they think, but they haven't actually processed it for themselves. Thank you for not being one of those people.
Yeah, I actually have one of those quotes of yours. It says, anywhere that you see chaos, you're seeing a cry for order to someone or something that abdicated a responsibility. Creation is crying out for her Redeemer, you. And I love that because I feel like what Sean's saying, and, you know, just your story about the apple tree, it is because you encompass this foundation of love and just your being in that place of rest. And I guess I probably have a question off the back of that coming, you know, as we're winding up, about that being seated in rest is not this inactive state. But for some of us, we have had to go through a period of pulling ourselves away from the busyness of everything to understand who we are in that place. Who am I? I don't even know who I am other than what I've seen on social media or who I think I should be. But actually, and I feel like that's part of what gives you that authority and that power, is that you're just not in that results place, but you're in that, the very essence of love itself. And it's so palatable and easy to be able to receive something that's coming out of foundation of love and wanting to see each person come into the fullness of who they've always been from the beginning of time. And just to be in the presence of people who understand that all creation groaning looks like, wow, here we are in the presence of these people who now I understand that my part is to be a part of the desires of their heart, to fulfill the desire of their heart, to have fruit in their life. I can do that. I'm a tree. I'm going to bring forth fruit because I feel the desire resonating out of the hearts of the people who walk on my land, that I'm going to fulfill that desire because it gives me great pleasure as a tree, and I'm coming into alignment with the great pleasure that is within them as they're walking out the fullness of who they are. So yeah, that did you have a period of time where that rest was a real physical rest for you to come into that place of now being, because you're very busy, you have a very lot of things going on in your community and your life, and you know, pastoring a growing church and an academy and all of the different things you guys do online and everything. What does that look like to be in that place, be seated in that place where you just know who you are and you can, and it's not a place of nothingness, you know, you're stewarding so much. How do you do that?
That's a great question too. So I would explain it this way. I'll start at the end and then go back to the beginning. So this month, I edited a new book, which is extremely intense. We're preparing to receive about 160 students into our school starting in a week and a half. My wife and I remodeled our entire first floor. We had Christmas, we had New Year's, and not one moment of it felt like work.
Yeah.
None of it. So I learned most of what I know about rest through my marriage, most of what I understand about identity through being a husband. And it was able to start there. That was kind of the microcosm that made the rest of my life make sense. And this would be more vulnerable than it is theological. So my wife and I have been married for almost 18 years. And I'm not just saying this because people are going to listen. I'm convinced that we have the best marriage on the planet. And if anyone wants anything that I have, they should ask for a marriage like mine before anything else. We got married when I was 19 years old. My wife was 28. And my wife had been, she'd led a terrible life. I guess I don't want to give details, but if she watched her mother get shot, she was in bad relationships, she was abused, molested, neglected, you name it. And then when we got married, all I wanted to do was make sure that she knew she was safe. And that would never happen here. But there was this really odd thing that kept taking place where I couldn't convince her of that. And after 5 years, I realized that the reason I couldn't convince her of that is because when she turned to me in chaos, she was crying out for peace. And what she got was me just responding to her chaos with more chaos, because my love for her actually sent me into a panic when I saw her panicking. And then I met a guy who had a really solid revelation of grace. And he told me that God made me who I am, no one else. And if nobody made me that, nobody can make me not that. So when my wife went into chaos, I always took it as a sign of some sort of inability on my part. So I turned inward immediately. Well, I'm not enough. I can't provide. I can't protect, whatever it was. And then that guy called me one day and he said, how's the journey in masculinity going? And I said, it's getting better. And he said, that's your problem. And he cut me off. And he said, nothing gets better in the kingdom. It just is. You either step into it or stay out of it. And it's like all the lights turned on. And I realized that to my wife, I'm everything she needs. I am a protector. I am a provider. I'm a savior. I am to her what Christ is to me. And then her chaos didn't produce chaos in me anymore. If she had to be chaotic, which I know this is going to sound really odd, but chaos is part of the beauty of femininity. Women are meant to be like waves. They're gifted to know what is true right now, even if what is true right now is crazy. Like it's just it's part of the beauty of femininity. And men often, masculinity is meant to be like the mountain. The waves can crash against the mountain, but the mountain is not supposed to move. And I was not acting that way. So all of that to say this: when I realized that I was who God said I was, void of results, then I became to my wife what she needed, which was stability and comfort and peace. And I didn't have to try to be that. I just was that. And then that became the microcosm where I became the leader that my church needed. And I remember the day that happened, I was a basket case. Like it sounds like I have it all together, but I was a basket case. I just thought I was bad at everything. And we'd gather a few hundred people and I'd preach a message and the altar would be full and everyone would be clapping and people, miracles would happen. And then I'd tell my wife on the way home, I can't do that again. They're going to leave next week when I can't keep up with what happened this week. And then I had another long conversation with a very good friend, but I had the same encounter, the same type of encounter that I had in my marriage, I had in my ministry. Like, God made you, He gifted you, and your only responsibility is to be your authentic self. And if somebody's not going to like your authentic self, there's nothing you can do about that. That's their problem. Yeah. So you will feel at rest when you're comfortable authentically being yourself. It makes you manipulation proof. Like if you don't like lions don't get mad that you don't like lions. They're lions, like whether you're a fan of them or not, they're not changing. But it makes you manipulation proof. It makes you insecurity proof. And it makes you able to love people in spite of or despite what they're able to offer you in stability and affirmation. You don't have to have somebody that's stable to love them, because your stability comes from your identity, and your stability can calm chaos. And like I said, it started in my marriage. I've learned the deepest revelations that I've gained have come from being in relationship with a woman who's been pursuing God since she was 7 years old.
Wow.
And when we first got together, we were not in a good place. So we would finish a bottle of Southern Comfort together, and she would tell me how much God loved me and what He's going to do when He gets a hold of me. We weren't practicing Christians, but she knew the truth, and she knew what was going to happen when and if God got a hold of me. I was so uncomfortable with it at the time. I was like, just let's talk about something else. And to answer your question, Miss Kylie, rest. I always say that a son in love with his father will always outperform a slave in fear of his master. So if you look at my life right now, I look like I'm working a lot, but I'm not. There's absolutely no stress involved with what I'm doing right now, but not a moment of it feels like striving.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Wow.
So powerful.
Yeah, I have something personal for you, Tommy, not not personally challenging for you, but something that I want to share about me. And that is that in general, day-to-day life, I'm a pretty direct person, and I don't know how that's come about. That's just how I've been born or something. It's not something I've endeavored to become. But in amongst my directness and conversing with people that I meet on a daily basis, I spend a lot of time after talking with people mulling over whether I said something wrong, whether I hurt their feelings, whether I should have said something in a different way. You know, I spend a lot of time thinking about, because I care deeply about people, I don't want to hurt them, but I also don't want to be some other version of myself to try and protect people's feelings that I don't know if I'm even offending. And I'm just wondering whether that makes sense to you at all. And secondly, if you have any advice for somebody like me that is trying not to hurt people but feel like I might be sometimes, what do I do with that?
Beautiful question. And your question shows your heart. So we have another gentleman, Anthony Santana, who was ordained the same day you guys were ordained, that I've had the privilege of talking this out with too. Here's the main thing. You, Sean, being uniquely you, is the most important thing for creation to experience. I would say that the main thing to contemplate here is, I know this is going to sound different, but whether or not you have a choice to say what you want to say versus being compassionate to the hearer and refining what you'd like to say in a way that you can still communicate but not offend. Here's the difference. Sean Henderson being compassionate and choosing to sway his words is an expression of Sean Henderson's compassionate nature. It's not a counterfeit. So just because you tailored what you needed to say to someone's heart doesn't make it inauthentic. It makes it authentic. Okay. So, but if you don't have a choice, and I don't know if you experience this or not, but I know people that they literally ask me, how do I keep my mouth shut? Like, I don't know how to not say it. That is legitimately, that is more of a lack of identity than tailoring what you need to say to somebody's heart. A lack of self-control is a deed of the old nature. It's a habit of the old nature. So people who accidentally say offensive things because they have no self-control, that is more of a counterfeit expression of identity than being compassionate and changing what you say. Having a choice to exert your will or tailor your will for the comfort of someone else is the ultimate expression of divinity. Because in God's sovereignty, he can do whatever he wants. But his expression of divinity is he has enough control to have a choice to tailor himself to your heart. And it doesn't make his communication inauthentic. That is the most authentic expression of his nature, is that he loves you enough to speak in a way that you'll understand and not be hurt. So, yeah, it's great. But the main thing to focus on is choice. Like, can you choose to tailor your words, or do you have no control over your tongue? And you need to get a greater understanding of who you are, so that you know you can express yourself in a different way. A lack of choice is what leads to murderous rage. A lack of choice, because people that say what they're thinking, that don't want to say it, but they're saying it because they can't control it, they hate themselves, and they hate themselves for it. And that is a sign of sin, carnality, old nature, deeds of the flesh, whatever, label you want to put on it. But you having a choice to say exactly what you want, the way that you want to say it, or making the choice to tailor to someone's heart, is an expression of solid identity and not a deviation from it.
Wow. It's so powerful.
Yeah, that is helpful, Tommy. You're a beautiful man. I love our relationship, and I don't necessarily, ask questions like that of somebody that I don't expect to have value attached to the answer. So thank you for breaking that down for me. I feel like I feel like I am disciplined enough, and that's not something that I've earned. I believe that's something I've been given, and to not just have my mouth run off. Your explanation of the way that you put it to me just says to me that I am desiring not to hurt people, and I think it's natural to be questioning and reshaping questions and thinking about it afterwards for the next opportunity. The next time you meet with somebody that you're trying to minister to, you're trying to show the love of God to. So thank you for that, mate. We're winding towards the end of our time because we want to respect our time together, but we also are excited that we have access to you forever. So we don't have to use all of our time up in one go. Kylie probably has something.
I know there's not going to be a person out there who doesn't want to know, how do I listen to more of what this guy has to say? So how can people find you, and what ways can they connect with you?
Yeah, I think the website that you have flashing across the screen right there is probably a pretty good start. I am terrible at promotion. I can never answer this question well, no matter how many podcasts I do. So what I'll do for you is I'll send you my link tree that just gets you to all of our resources. That'll take you to our YouTube page, the church's Facebook. Our YouTube seems to be where most people consume the Sunday sermons. The really cool time that we have together, which you guys have been on quite often, is the second and fourth Thursday of every month. At 8 a.m. Eastern time, we do a Zoom call called The Download. And it's just a Q&A, and it's our whole international community. There's people from Australia, South Africa, Canada, because we noticed that the number one thing that we get in our email inbox is questions. And I am terrible at writing and typing, so answering people's questions via email is not my strong suit. So we just say, hey, jump on Thursday morning, ask it live, and everybody else will get, a benefit from the answer. So that's always fun to jump on too. But
it is.
It's wonderful to hear that you're no good at something, mate. So you're the complete package in every other way. Now, you have a book coming out, obviously. It's obvious for us that you have a book coming out in February. Is it the 1st of February? Is that that's actually happening on that day?
That's actually happening on that date. Yeah. Unveiled will be released that day. Yeah, we're working through final edits right now and cover design. That's what I was doing right before this call. Was reviewing my editor's edits for the chapters. But yeah, it'll be out February 1st. We're crunching, but it's going to get done.
Wonderful. So go to Legacy Church INT. Does that stand for international? Does it? Or
it does.
Yeah.
Yep. So legacychurchint.org is the place to find out more about Tommy Miller and everything that he has to offer the world. Or what you should probably do is just jump on a plane and fly to New Philadelphia, Ohio, and just walk into his church and be challenged by heaven on earth.
That would be wonderful.
So we just want to thank you so much, Tommy, for spending an hour or so of your time with us for Reimagine podcast. It's just been crazy and beautiful and amazing, and it's just been such a blessing to hear the wisdom flow from within you and just sharing your life and your experiences. And it's been I know it'll be a blessing to all of our listeners. And so thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
It's a privilege. I love you so much.
We love you too, Tommy, and we're just so grateful for you in our life.
Yeah.
The honor's on mine.
Right.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
All right.
Love you guys. Thank you so much.
Tommy.
Thank you.
Reimagine.